Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the big conversation. It's official. Senator Tim Scott, the Black GOP representative, has announced his presidential run. We'll talk about the implication of his candidacy. Also, let's talk about Dems' policing policy. Have they moved away from being progressive to now just trying to win elections? This is the big discussion as Ms. Cherelle Parker seems to be getting closer to becoming Philadelphia's next mayoral hopeful. We'll have that conversation. Also, we'll be checking in with our doctor, Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness, as she talks to us about the implications of social media, TikTok, and other platforms on children. Yep. Just don't tell your children not watching Cherelle Black Star. We'll have that conversation. And I got something else for you. So stay with us. It's a lot to discuss on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Woo! All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. Happy Monday. Happy Monday, folks. Good to talk to you. Hope you had a great and restful and peaceful weekend. I know I did. So big shout out to everybody that is tuning in today. Big shout out to my culture crew. I'm ready to jump right into it and have those discussions with you. Make sure you join us if you have not had a chance to participate in the conversations. And this is one of the very, very, very few spaces where we want to hear directly from you. You can log in and check us out on YouTube as we're streaming right now on that platform. But also we're streaming now on blackstarnetwork.com and, of course, on the big platform, Amazon News. So we would love to hear directly from you what you have to say about these big conversations. All right, let's jump right into it. We're going to first talk about what's happening with the presidential election as it's shaping up on both the Democratic and Republican side. On the Republican side, a big announcement was made earlier today where Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina has officially announced that he is running to be the next president of the United States. Now, Tim Scott is a Black Republican. He comes from the state of South Carolina that hasn't had a Black Republican for years. But Tim Scott seems to be a shining star in the GOP, and he has already amassed $22 million in the war chest as he goes forward in his endeavor to become the second Black president of the United States. So I wanted to talk to us a little bit about this, especially given the fact that the Republicans have they got a race issue. They got a race problem, just like the Democrats, but more so the Republicans, trying to figure out who is going to be the next candidate that's going to represent the future of the party and the candidate that has what it takes to go against the former president, Donald Trump. Here to join me, as he has been joining me each and every Monday, my brother, my friend, Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland. He is a lecturer in the African American Studies Department, and I'm always happy to have his political insight. And he's looking better, sharper, dapper than me today, folks.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I got to stop bringing you on, man, because you're upstaging me, Jason. You're upstaging me, brother.
Never that, my brother. You always sharp.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it. First and foremost, bro, good to talk to you. Let's talk about your guy, Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott. Jay, if you don't know, Dr. Nichols is always on conservative platforms. He's probably one of the few Black that's good that talks about these things. But Senator Tim Scott has announced his presidential run. What do you make of it, bro?
Well, I think he knows that he has no chance of actually becoming president. I think that this is a run for to be a running mate. I think he could be chosen by any number of the candidates. Everybody but Nikki Haley would probably choose Tim Scott if they're smart. Tim Scott is somebody who they think, again, because a lot of times Republicans have less respect for black voters, they think black people just look at a black person and see them in a suit and say, hey, let's vote for them, which we know that's not the case. You and I, coming from Maryland, we've had plenty of black conservatives that can't ever win a race, can't ever win a statewide race. We had Michael Steele, and they're qualified black conservatives. They're not like kooks. You had Michael Steele.
Right.
You had Alan Keyes. We've had lots of them, but they never win because black people don't vote for them, not just because white people won't vote for them. I think Tim Scott is a good running mate, particularly if you match him up against Kamala Harris. I think that's what they're looking for. I think that's what Tim Scott's calculus is. It's not that he's actually going to become the next president of the United States. I think, or even the GOP the GOP nominee. I think the GOP nominee is pretty much sewn up. It's criminal defendant Trump. He's the guy that's going to be the GOP nominee. I don't see DeSantis making it anywhere. I think Tim Scott is going to be a running mate for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, again, he struggles in the suburbs. He obviously struggles with black voters. He struggles with women. Tim Scott comes across moderate. And so a lot of people on the right, this isn't about getting black votes. It's about getting some black people to sit at home and then to convince the white folks in the suburbs who may like Donald Trump on his policies but don't like his presentation. It's like, oh, well, Tim Scott will be the adult in the room. And he's black, so you can't make the argument, because of the small-mindedness of some people, they'll say you can't make a race argument. He's not racist because, look, he has a black running mate. Although they never do that for Joe Biden.
Right.
So I think, he's running for VP. That's his calculus right now. He's not trying to be president.
Some people, the crew has already chimed in on this, Doc, and I'm sure you know what the consensus is about Senator Tim Scott. Diane Harris, you said Tim Scott is a joke and not intellectually smart. Brian Hall, you said Tim Scott is running for vice president. Let's see here. Tiana checked in and said Tim Scott has no chance. So, and then Hayward checked in and said another Herschel Walker. Is he that bad?
No. Even I have to speak up for Tim Scott and say he is not Herschel Walker. That's a whole nother level.
Right.
He may be bad. I may not like his policies, but at least he has policies. And I would probably disagree to a certain degree that he's not intellectually smart. I'm not sure that that's true. I'm not sure that it's not true. I know it's a double negative, but I think that he, from what I've seen, is relatively intelligent. I don't think that's his downside. I think it's that he is ambitious and is willing to throw people under the bus, including his own people. We're talking about a guy who said that he's been stopped by the police because he's black, but then says America's not a racist country. He knows the foundations of this nation. He talks about how he came from a single parent household and all of these things, but then doesn't talk about the structural barriers that other young black people are facing and older black people. So I think, the right is going to try and take him, not because they want your vote, Black Star Network viewer. They don't want your vote. They want you to sit at home. They want you to say, look, you don't like Joe Biden and you don't like Donald Trump. And, Donald Trump isn't any more racist than Joe Biden because, look, he has a black person and so does Joe Biden. So, and this guy comes from South Carolina, so he's, so they cancel each other out. So just stay home. That's what they want from you. They want you to say, I don't like Joe Biden. He can't talk. He's old, and not vote. I think the big thing, and trust me, I've heard as much as you stated. I'm in some of these circles. I see it. I hear it. I'm the, I guess I hate to say the spook that's out by the door sometimes, or Invisible. If you read The Invisible Man, sometimes they have these conversations and I hear them. So they just like, black people sit at home. They're not trying to win your vote with Tim Scott. You know,
Right.
they're trying to tell people in the suburbs we're not racist.
But the thing is that with the Republican Party, they're not trying to get a massive amount of black voter support, though, right? It's because every time I've heard this conversation, like I remember having this conversation, I think you and I had it, and I've had it for a couple other folks about Donald Trump and the support that he gotten from black men. Like he's not looking to grab 20, 30, 40% of the black male vote or black voter, market. They're talking about 10, 12%, how that can be the difference. Is that still the strategy you think the GOP is going to that's the end goal, rather, that the GOP is going to be reaching for at this point with even
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're not, going to go back on police reform. They're not going to talk about police reform. They're not going to talk about any of these issues. They want somebody who can get up there like Tim Scott or like Daniel Cameron or others and say, look, I'm black. They don't have, it's not about the diversity that the Democratic Party has. They want to make people in the suburbs who are uncomfortable, white folks in the suburbs who are uncomfortable with Donald Trump and some of his statements and even some of the policies and some of the things that have been said and say, look, we got a black guy with us. You know what I mean? That's what's really supposed to happen. They may want to peel off some black male votes because black men supposedly are a little more pliable, a voting base, a little more malleable than black women who are firmly, who are the backbone of the Democratic Party. And we've seen more black female visibility. And I think, honestly, that is a problem for Democrats. They do need to have, yes, we have Obama, but that was a few years ago. We need to have more black male presence, more black people, black male strategists, more black men in the room, in addition to black women. Because I think if they peel off that 1 or 2%, because remember, I always tell people, it's not about, like you said, the 30 or 40%. It is about 11,780 votes in Georgia. That's all. You know what I mean? That's like 0.0001% of the voting base in Georgia, of the 16 million or whatever, not 16 million, but the 8 million voters in Georgia or what have you. They're not looking for big numbers. In some of these states, the Pennsylvanias and the Michigans and the Wisconsins, they're not looking for huge margins.
Yeah.
They want some black folks in the inner city to sit at home. This is why you got long lines. This is why they shut down polling places so that you have long lines. They want to frustrate you so that you don't vote. That's the thing. And in this case, they want to have plausible deniability for racism and be able to push a guy out there. And it's not to get your vote, like I said, it's to get those white folks in the suburbs who were part of the difference.
And Doc, I want to kind of expound on that because I want to share with you and with folks what Tim Scott said, because I think he's going to be touching a different chord with his campaign than what we have been seeing coming out of the overall GOP party. Folks, we got to take our first pause. When we come forward, more conversation about Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina announcing his presidential run today. He's one of many Republicans that are looking to dethrone former President Donald Trump. You want to get your take, folks. Join us in a conversation on YouTube. We're streaming there live and on Black Star Network and, of course, on Amazon News. Stay with me. We got a lot to discuss as we continue the conversation here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that
We're not getting, you get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about Senator Tim Scott has officially announced that he's running for president of the United States. Senator Tim Scott is a black man representing the Republican Party, and he's looking to take the party to the next level. Now, the thing is about Tim Scott is that he wants to position himself as the guy that is coming from the South, that have come from humble beginnings, and then at the same time has a connectedness to the pain that black people in this country have endured as a result of being disenfranchised and marginalized. And he often talks about that in his conversation and his rhetoric, but saying that he trying to position himself as the trailblazer, the guy that's going to lead us through all of the madness, through all of the racism, through all of the oppression, all of the discrimination. Tim Scott has positioned himself as being a man with strong morals, strong character, strong values, strong religious connectedness, that he is going to take us to the promised land. Let me just check in with my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland. Tim Scott said this, Doc. I want to throw this quote up there, at least. Let's look at this first one. This is what Tim Scott said today in his remarks as he announced his presidential run. He said, "Our party and our nation are standing at a time for choosing victimhood or victory, grievance or greatness." He planned to say this at a packed and boisterous morning rally in the gym of his alma mater, Charleston Southern University. He said, "I choose freedom and hope and opportunity." All right, I want to go back to my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols. Doc, when we look at that, the rhetoric that we get from Tim Scott is not one where we, and he stepped away, but folks, I want to throw this really quickly. Let me hear from the crew, then we get my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, back. The rhetoric, folks, that we hear from Tim Scott is not one where he's trying to be the divisive guy. And y'all tell me, he wants to, and I don't even want to use the same type of comparison, but he's trying to drum up a much more inspirational tone to his candidacy, more aspirational tone to his ideas and to his vision, right? And I think that this is the part that may bring some black voters over. And crew, y'all tell me this. If he becomes more inspirational, if he becomes more aspirational, if he becomes the guy that is going to, that has shown himself to be the guy who has been, quote unquote, living the American dream. He's a part of a party that he knows that has not been, that has not shown great interest in black people, but he's working through that. I'm doing my part to try to open this party up to be more inclusive. Do you think that this is going to bring more people in, especially more black voters? Folks, I want to get your take on this as we have this conversation. And so many of you are checking in. So big shout out to all of our new watchers here on the show today as we have this discussion. But do you think that Tim Scott's approach of being aspirational, of being of showing that he can, if he can get through the party, if he can make some headway in the party, that it might draw or bring more black voters into the party? If he can be a symbol of inclusiveness, And you heard Dr. Jason Nichols just say this a moment ago, folks. He's not talking about big chunks. All you got to do is get a couple of slivers of the black vote, and it could change the dynamic. It can change the game in a very, very significant way. Let me go back to you, crew, and hear what you got to say. Many of you have been bringing up some of the past comments that Senator Tim Scott has made, some of the past things that he has done. For example, Tiana, you checked in and said Tim Scott fumbled the George Floyd Policing Act, that he was one of the voices that stopped that policing act from getting some forward movement. Yes, absolutely. But TJ, as Tiana said, Tim Scott's fumbled. TJ, you checked in and said he has a chance. Yes, because we like success, not poverty. So y'all see me making this face all the time? Like, because it's really, that's the part of the story that Tim Scott, he's not a Herschel Walker. He's not a Herschel Walker, but he's a guy that shows that he has some level of success. And if you're not a deep political, if you don't follow everything that is going on in the political space, if you look at Tim Scott, if you listen to Tim Scott, you might be drawn into the fact that he is a successful black man within the Republican Party. And that his tone is not seeing, like, my story is one of pulling up the bootstraps, not one of keeping, of feeling bad about where you are. And so I think his message of, when he said this, and this is why I think this is important, when he said victimhood or victory, how many black people would love to hear about a candidate that speaks to victory and not victimhood? And we have to admit, folks, that there are a number of folks who criticize the Democratic Party because they often make black people look like victims. All right? Real Brooklyn, check in. You checked in and said this. Only reason why I'm giving Tim Scott an ear, come on, see, I'm telling y'all, we can't just write him off, because Real Brooklyn, you said something. You said only reason why I'm giving Tim Scott an ear is because he defeated Strom Thurmond's son in the House of Representatives run in 2009. We all know who Strom Thurmond was, so he has my interest. And guess what, Real Brooklyn? I think you aren't the only one. I think you aren't the only one who feel that way. I think you're not the only one. Now, Jacqueline Boateng, Jacqueline, you always check in, so it's good to hear from you. And Real Brooklyn, I thank you, bro. You say he's vying for vice president, not inspiring at all. Remember, he is not black yet. Look. Here's where I am in my growth and development on this, Jacqueline, folks, and crew. You could be black. You could know your history and all of that, right? I don't want us to get into a cultural conversation like he's not black or she's not black or black enough, because who sets the standards for that? If you get into that part of the conversation, I feel like it's a slippery slope. So I don't want us to get into a space where we're saying he's not black yet or he's not black enough, because that's all based upon one's view, one experience. So we can't, that is not a solid metric to use to determine whether someone is serious about themselves. Tim Scott believes what he believes. Tim Scott has had the experiences that he has had, right? He grew up in whether it's poverty or he grew up in a time of racism and segregation and all of those things. But if you were to talk to Tim Scott, he would say to himself, like, no, I am actually the epitome of black success, because I came up in this time and I made some different choices. And at the end of the day, I'm prospering. I'm doing what I want to do and what I love to do. McCall checked in. You said he is the exception in success, not the norm. His brand is I did it, so can you. And guess what, McCall? How many black folks, let's keep it real, how many black folks think like that? See, I'm not writing no one off right now, folks. Look, if Trump can get in office, and I'm not saying Tim Scott's going to get in office, but my point is that if people took Trump seriously enough to put him in office, I'm not writing anybody off. Unless you are, except for Herschel Walker. But for Tim Scott, I'm not writing him completely off. Because many of us might say, oh, he's not this, he's not that. But to a lot of group of people, he is this, he is that. So to your point, McCole, you making the point of that I did it. Yeah, there are a lot of Black folks who may not feel comfortable in saying it, especially in Black spaces. But they might say, look, I don't understand my people. My people, we got all of these opportunities. Yes, we have systemic racism. Yes, we have discrimination. Yes, the goal line seems to move every time we cross the finish line. But my people aren't assertive enough. My people don't stay with the program. I don't think that's an odd idea. I think a lot of people actually think that way, folks. I think a lot of people actually think that way. Duncan Bridget checking in. Duncan, good to hear from you. First time. You say, in my book, he's a yes man and knows his place, as does Donald's. He doesn't stand up against the degeneracy his party spews. I wouldn't want to be caught in a foxhole with him. Yeah, I agree. I hear you. But guess what, Duncan? I think he has an appeal. I think he has an appeal for those who don't know, for those who are looking for an alternative, for those who can look past his statements and say, yeah, but there's a certain level of success that he brings to the table. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see how his candidacy plays out. But folks, I don't think we should write him off. As much as you might not agree with them, I might not agree with them. The fact is that somebody's going to be putting in there. Just very quickly, he has $22 million in his war chest. He's raising money. Folks, resources are backing him. And so we will see how his campaign continues to unfold here. But Senator Tim Scott is not, I don't think he's one to be written off. I just don't think so. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the other side, the Democrats, and how their policing policy may change and might look a little bit like the GOP. We'll have, I'm going to share with you what's happening in Philadelphia, and I want to get your take on whether you agree or disagree with this new policy. So stay with me. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
right, folks, welcome back to the show. Let me switch gears from talking about the Republicans, the GOP, to now talking about the Democrats. This is one of our big culture convos for the day around this issue that we see coming out of Philadelphia, as they just had a major election, a primary election, where they have moved forward into selecting their next mayor of the great city of Philadelphia. Now, let me just share this with you very quickly, and then I want to get your take on this, folks. The Democrat in Philadelphia's mayoral hopeful, Miss Cherelle Parker. Now, Cherelle Parker was going up against a progressive candidate in Philadelphia, and now part of one of the big discrepancies, or one of the big differences of her platform versus her progressive candidate's platform is their take on policing. Progressive candidates said, look, we need to invest more into resources. Yes, we can continue to support police officers, but money needs to be put in other places. Well, Cherelle Parker, a Democrat, has said she wants to beef up the police department. And not only does she want to beef up the police department, she wants them to be walking the beat. And check this out, folks, should be able to stop and search pedestrians if they have a legitimate reasons to do so. Yeah, let me just share this with you. Take a look at this first quote here, folks, as we're looking at what's going on in Philadelphia. The Democrat in Philadelphia's mayoral hopeful, Cherelle Parker, who will almost certainly become Philadelphia's next mayor, wants to hire hundreds of additional police officers to walk their beats and get to know residents. She wants to devote resources to recruiting more police, and says officers should be able to stop and search pedestrians if they have a legitimate reason to do so. Now, Park is a former state legislator and city council member. She argued that it's a false choice to decide between investing in policing and addressing broader societal problems. She said it is not either or. She said this during the campaign. She said that approach helped her defeat progressive rival Helen Jim by more than 25,000 votes. All right, crew, what's your take on this? And I'm asking the question. Now we're looking at this new, this win in Philadelphia. If Cherelle Parker becomes the next mayor of the city of Philadelphia, right? I'm looking at the policing policy coming from the Democratic Party. Is it about stopping crime or winning elections? Because Democrats have known not to be as hard or as tough on crime as Republicans, right? Even though, and this is, I'm gonna show you the two dynamics. Even though folks say, oh, the Democrats are not as hard on police, on policing or tough on crime as Republicans, but it was under Clinton that we got that famous bill which locked up black men across the country, where black men were criminalized for a host of reasons. It was under, I know in my home city of Baltimore, with the stop and frisk, it was under a Democratic Mayor Martin O'Malley, that we saw black men being locked up at a higher rate. We saw stop and frisk incidents more. So we can't, I'm not sure why Democrats have why there's this idea about Democrats not being tough on crime like the Republicans, because from my experience, the Democrats have followed their tough on crime strategy pretty well. But this is post George Floyd. This is post of all of those police shootings. This is post the larger discussions about, how we should defund the police, that now we're seeing that Democrats may be turning a page on getting tough on crime at a time where people have been calling for more progressive, bold action to take place. And we find out that a lot of these candidates who are taking more of a progressive approach are less appealing to voters who want to get tough on crime. So is it about stopping crime or winning elections? And this is what I'm asking from the Democratic's point of view, folks. Share your thoughts as we have this conversation, because I think so many of us, we want to see crime stopped, but we do want to see some advancement in policing. Can we do both? Cherelle Parker says it's not about either or. We can do both. But I'm not sure if this is the right take or the right measure for us to take. Lori, you checked in. Lori Park said, well, her city is going to lose millions with all of those lawsuits. There's too many lawsuits. Too many lawsuits. Walumbo the Goat, you checked in and said, frisk you under the law. I'm with that if law has been violated. Okay. If the law has been violated. If the law has been violated. Let me just share with you very quickly, before we take our next pause here, let me share with you what one political science professor out of Temple University in Philadelphia had to say about this. I'm talking about Michael Sansis. Michael said this. Take a look at this quote, folks. He said that Tuesday's results suggest the salience of police reform may be subsiding from the days when people were protesting in overwhelming numbers. Take a look. He said crime has crowded out concerns about over-policing. It doesn't mean that people have become anti-reform. That can easily be surfaced. It's just a sign of where the public's attention is and where political leaders have moved, and that's really toward the center. So we don't want to see the two extremes, like you overinvestment in police or you underfund police. He's saying that most of folks, and this is why political leaders are starting to walk this walk, is wants to be in the middle. You want to keep the police department strong, but then you also want some progressive ideas to speak to mental health issues, police to speak to response rates, that speaks to the abuse and brutality that we're seeing in these national cases. So is this about stopping crime or winning elections? Which way do you think political leadership should go, especially Democratic political leadership? I want you to share your thoughts as we're streaming right now on YouTube. We're going to take another quick pause. When we come forward, I want to get to you what you have to say, crew, about this and about Ms. Cherelle Parker's stance on this. Is this a sign that the Democrats may actually be tougher on crime and wanting to go into that space rather than actual police reform? I want to get your take on that. Stay with me. The conversation continues with The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. I've been talking about the policing policy coming from the Democratic Party as we talk about the primary election that took place in Philadelphia, where Cherelle Parker had ousted won. Yeah, take a look at that. That's just some of the footage of Cherelle Parker's victory, as she had beat her progressive rival Helen Jim by 25,000 votes. And one of the big pieces of the agenda was where those candidates stood on policing. Cherelle Parker wants to invest more into police departments. She wants officers on the beat. And she even has gone as far as to say that she wants to devote resources to recruit officers, and officers should be able to stop and search pedestrians if they have a legitimate reason to do so. Stop and frisk while they're walking the beat, folks. This is a different tone that Democrats have taken around the issue of policing, especially after the summer of the killing of George Floyd, which we are coming up on this week, folks. And in terms of his death anniversary is May 25th. But look at how the conversation of policing has changed this country. There was call for everything from defunding the police to creating alternative law enforcement entities, to breaking up large departments in cities that have become known and have really cities that have become known for police violence and police brutality. So to now we're getting back to having a more tougher on crime stance coming from not the Republican Party, but from the Democrats. So what's your take on this, folks? Do you agree with Cherelle Parker that it's time for us to crack down on crime, and the best way to do it is to invest in the police departments, to get officers walking on the beat again, and to give them the power to stop and frisk anyone they see as being, if they have a legitimate reason to do so? All right, let me go back to you, crew. Shalenda checking in. You say, we know from past experiences that stop and frisk will target Black people. Absolutely. We don't have to talk much about that. We don't have to talk much about that at all. That's the part of the reason why and I'm saying so many advocates, Black and brown advocates, activists, young leaders have went out to the streets to talk about this issue. We've seen that in major cities across this country, whether it's Los Angeles here, whether it's in New York City, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Philadelphia, Chicago, Miami, wherever you are, whether there is a large population, a concentration of Black and brown folks, stop and frisk, unfortunately, has been part of the policing strategy in those big cities. So yeah, absolutely. And how do you explain that in the city of, quote unquote, of brotherly love? TJ, you said, I need to feel safe when walking the streets of Philly. Well, will you feel safe if the police pulled you up for a quote unquote legitimate reason? This is where I think, folks, we need to be very mindful of the things that we say we want if we do not have an understanding of the impact they will make down the road. We could want a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? But when it comes to this police, and we're talking about common sense policy that is going to keep us safe, but at the same time is going to keep us in mind about all of the changing dynamics of our population. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want the police to pull up my son when he becomes a teenager, or your son, or your nephew, or your niece, if they believe they have a legitimate reason to do so. And they're just simply hanging out. They might have a hoodie on, standing on the corner, waiting on a bus. And the police, imagine a police officer walking up to him and saying, look, what you doing? He said, I'm waiting on the bus. It doesn't look like it. You know, this is a high crime area. Well, buses drive through high crime areas. What would be the legitimate reason? Those are the concerns that I think we need to have. Pretty Brown Mimi, 726, you said, I would like these police departments to make a real effort to communicate and relate to the Black communities that they serve, and more diversity in law enforcement. Absolutely. 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 But I'm concerned that if the Democrats feel like this is the best way, that we might galvanize around that, and then we might be opening the door back up to stop and frisk policy. We might be ushering for police to abuse us and to profile us. That's the concern that I really do have. And if Ms. Parker said these things because, you know, she talked to her constituents and people say, look, we were tired of the crime, the rising crime rate, and I get that, But I can't believe that in this day and time, folks, I cannot believe that in this day and time that we can't think of some alternatives. You got more nonprofits that have emerged. We talked about that. There are, Black nonprofits who are on the ground that can assist police in this process. You're talking about churches and mosques and other faith institutions that can assist in this process. You mean to tell me that the only strategy to deal with crime or rising crime in the cities is more police and getting back to a policy that has disenfranchised us and marginalized us and abused us? That's the only option. Is that what we're saying? In a city that is full of black folks, this is the only option. Erica Beverett. Erica, you checked in and said police need an active DEI plan, diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. Absolutely. They need a DEI plan in recruiting and hiring, and then they need a DEI plan in administering justice and serving and protecting. That's what I think, Erica. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Tiana, you said like black folks were asking for the 94 crime bill. Perfect. And that's one of the things. Remember, I said that came under Bill Clinton, a Democrat. So, and look, if you look at the history, we often kind of characterize it that, oh, Biden was there, Bill Clinton was there. Black leaders were there. Black leaders were calling for the federal government to do something from everything from gang warfare to dealing with all of the other crime issues in our communities at that time. Y'all remember that crime bill. Y'all probably got family members that have become, that were abused and victimized under the crime bill. But y'all remember it. And see, we got to keep in mind, folks, that sometimes we in our own frustration and our wanting to see some change, and it's understandable, but those sentiments can be whipped up in such a frenzy that it gives us nothing. It really creates a situation where policy that is not in our best interest to be used against us because we just have a genuine desire to feel safe and secure in our homes and our communities. But then somebody else will take that very natural sentiment and make it unnatural, creating policies that are against the very interest. I'm not saying that if you want to feel safe in your communities that you want to see black folks get their head busted by police. I know that's not the case. But there aren't any checks and balances. There aren't any boundaries on how certain policies like this get enacted. And I think that's the thing. That's the great concern. So I'm all for making sure we make our community safe and decent places to live. But I'm very concerned by opening up Pandora's box and saying, yeah, we need more police. We need police to walk the beat. And more importantly, we give the police full range power to stop whoever they want to, that they deem to be a problem or based upon some quote unquote legitimate reason. I'm very concerned about that. I am not looking to bring back the 2024 crime bill in the city of Philadelphia. How about you? How about you? So folks, I want us to think through this. And I'm bringing this story up because I want us to think through this. We can want one thing, but we better damn sure have a plan on how we can make that one thing good and in the best interest for us all. Look, I got to take another pause. When we come forward, we're going to switch gears. Let's stop talking about crime. Let's talk about health and wellness. We're going to be checking in with Dr. Bridget Williams, MD, to give us this week's Reclaim Your Wellness and so much more. So stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, it is Monday, and as we have been doing every Monday, is as much as we talk about the political and social things, we got to talk about health and wellness. And so let's get another installment of today's Reclaim Your Wellness with Dr. Bridget, MD. All right, Dr. Bridget, good afternoon. How are you, sis?
Great. How are you today, Farajii?
I am all right. Let's talk a little bit about something that I think a lot of parents and school folks, and now a lot of states have actually been talking about. I said that we're trying to shift gears from the politics of health and wellness, but this is actually a political conversation just as much as it's a health and wellness conversation.
Yeah.
Where we're seeing states doing some stuff with social media.
Yeah, we're getting to that point where something that should be about families and mental health has really now become a political issue. And so keeping in mind, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. We're getting more than halfway through, getting near the end of the month. And so it's really important that we spend a little bit more time in this area. I know that we've covered a little bit of this before, but I really am asking the viewers to checking in on themselves as well as their kids, thinking about how are their grandparents, how are their good friends, people forget about their cousins, really doing some checking in around mental health, because we don't spend enough time in this area. When we think about just wellness, we think of every other aspect of our body, but we don't necessarily spend enough time thinking about this. And it's becoming more of an issue because of social media and the smartphones that kids carry. So what I really want to talk about today is how the government is now getting involved in what you are able to view on your phone as far as TikTok and social media today.
Yeah, so this is interesting because this is coming out of a conversation where we're seeing states starting to ban the use of TikTok. And I'm talking about the actual app, folks. They're not allowing TikTok to be used in the state. This is very, very interesting and a little scary in a sense, right? Because it's like 1984, Big Brother is watching type of thing. But I can understand why some states are having some concerns, because we're seeing that on these social media platforms, there are different contests, there are different things. Young children particularly are being exposed to adult content in a very, very unhealthy way. And this comes out of what we're seeing. Montana, the first state to completely ban TikTok. Now, some people might say Montana. I mean, who? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a smaller state, but I think the big thing is, can this be enforceable given the fact that this is social media? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to, how do you put a ban on something like this? Does that mean that it's not allowed to be downloaded in the phones? I mean, it gets into a lot of the weeds of this stuff. Yes. But Montana, what do you think was going through the minds of legislators in Montana when they looked at this whole thing?
Absolutely. So Montana decided that not only where some states are looking at certain age groups, right? As far as there's a bipartisan bill where it is the Protecting Kids on Social Media Act, where the youngest people are banned, younger than 13, and then between ages 13 to 17, you would need parental consent. A lot of this still goes back to TikTok specifically, but Montana said no one can be on TikTok. This is something they were looking to do to start in January 2024, and they've already gotten pushback, of course, as we know. And as you said, is this even enforceable? What they're looking at is three reasons why they're doing it. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you ban TikTok, what are we talking about? We're talking about reels, right? These quick 30-second, minute or so, quick information that is just almost addictive to our brains. But the fact of the matter is, you get rid of TikTok, you still got Instagram, you still got Facebook, it's still out there. What they're trying to prevent, though, is companies that are collecting data on you and your kids. So a lot of this is focused on kids, but this is for the adults as well. So don't leave yourself out of the equation during this conversation, because not only are your kids addicted, but you are too. And so it's important that we set an example and see how can we fix the problem. Another thing is, like you said, protecting our kids regarding the information online that they're being subjected to, sometimes being groomed or sexual trafficking, being exposed to adult content, whether that is pornography or just information and that is just not age appropriate. And so definitely, even though we can put some restrictions on the parental side, kids very quickly figure out how to get around that. I had this conversation with my own teenagers about them banning TikTok. And my now 18-year-old very quickly said, oh, we can get around that easily. Like, she didn't even flinch. She didn't even care, because she knew that there was an easy way to get around it. And it's already been discussed in their friend groups.
So that right there, Doc, that right there opens up like Pandora's box for me. It's like, first and foremost, and I've had this conversation with a number of people that feel like social media as much as it is supposed to be fun and bring people together, is so necessary to be a part of our lives that even if we try to put some restrictions or some boundaries on it, that people are like, no, we got to find a way. And that right there, that reeks of addictive.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you're telling your child or you're telling the addict, like, no, you can't have this anymore. They're like, oh, you want to try to do it? Oh, I got a better way. And it's like, now you're crossing into a different space. That's what it sells. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, absolutely. The fact of the matter is, I'm not saying that you won't have access to Google or other aspects of our computer and the internet. And we're talking specifically about social media, and a lot of this looks at TikTok specifically. You can survive without social media. Okay. And
wait a minute, hold on, Doc. Hold on. I gotta make it because I think the world has just shook right there when you said that. Hold on. I'm trying to fix my equipment here. Can you say that one more time?
You can absolutely survive without social media. Wow. And honestly, today, I definitely want to spend some time talking about solutions to this, not just the problem. Because you're living under a rock if you don't know social media isn't an issue, or that it's not addictive, or it's not good for your kids' brains, right? But the question, I think, is what do we do about it? And I think that's where we all really get stuck. There was a review in the Journal of American Medical Association found, we're talking about what does this do to kids, right? Why is this a big deal? There was an increase in pediatric mortality in 2020 and 2021, rising 11% and 8% in those years following amongst teenagers. This is not due to any other reason. It was suicide, it was homicide, and drug-related deaths. A lot of this has to do with deaths of despair, okay? Children feel so hopeless that they turn to drugs and suicide. This is not a white problem. This is not a Black problem. This is a young person problem. This is being exposed to information that they cannot handle. It's being exposed to cyberbullying and afraid to share that information. And so we really need to take this seriously. And the fact of the matter is, I keep wanting to bring this back. Yes, this is a teenage problem, but we also, as adults, we call it cyberbullying with teenagers. We call it trolling when it comes to adults, right? And if you don't think that adults don't get highly affected and have depression and have issues with this, then you're really missing the significance and the how strong that social media actually is. So I want to make sure we don't leave ourselves out of this conversation.
No, that is, I like how you put that. We call it cyberbullying as teenagers, trolling as adults.
Yeah.
So, and I think that to some degree, as adults, depending on who the adult is, you either kind of feed off of that energy, or you are, as you mentioned, your view of yourself takes a hit. But the cyberbullying for a child, they're not emotionally, mentally developed to make those decisions. So you're like, oh, they're just goofing off. They take that stuff to heart.
Yes. Absolutely.
And that whole thing about death of despair.
Yes. And it's a horrible situation. I think one big difference for adults versus our teenagers or young people is that many times if we have someone trolling us, it's rarely someone that we really know personally, though I've had that happen as well, right? But we know that we can come back at that on some level. The problem is that if your child blocks the person that is bullying them, they still end up going to school the next day. And if they're not seeing that bully, everyone is telling them what they are not seeing on social media. And the problem just continues to perpetuate itself, where adults many times can find ways to shut it down. And so it's really important that we take a closer look at this. Even with this overuse of cell phones and social media, there was a book out not that long ago by Jean twinge that talks about the fact that our kids' brains are developing very differently. That a 12th grader now is about emotionally developed as an 8th grader in previous generations.
Damn. Whoa.
Right?
Whoa.
Think about that. And I'll be honest, when I was reading this, I kind of looked at my own kids and thinking, gee, when, I have a 18-year-old, and when I was her age and, through high school, I was much more social. And no, she's social, she's active, she's, a great kid, but I was much more out there in the world, probably getting in more trouble, where she could sit on her bed and just have like a group chat thing with a bunch of friends on a Friday night and think that, she was living her best life. And no, they lived through COVID during those teenage years. So it's a little bit different. But at the same time, if you look at how a 12th grader now behaves versus how you behaved in 12th grade, they're not emotionally developed the same way that we were, that they're dealing with more, they're less likely to go out. They're less likely to go sometimes to social functions because they're more shy or don't know how to interact. They're getting into less alcohol, to be honest with you, because they are more engaged in this addiction than other addictions that may occur.
Social fitness and wellness. You checked in and said addiction. Absolutely. These kids are physically attacking teachers for taking phones during the class.
Yes, absolutely. So there was and so the question is, should the phone be not only in the kid's bedroom, should the phones even be in the school? And there is police in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina. There was an investigation over a fight over a cell phone between a substitute teacher. Also in Tennessee, high school teacher was pepper sprayed twice by a student who became irate that her phone was being taken away.
I saw the video for that. Doc. And I mean, all he was trying to do was take the cell phone.
Yeah.
And she went off. But I did read, and I'm just please correct me, that there's some dopamine levels that like what we're taking in affects the serotonin and the dopamine in our brain. So like we get excited when we get a notification versus when we don't. Like, can you explain that before we take our next pause?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, just as you're explaining that the same hormonal experience that you have with other addictions, whether it's opioids or gambling or shopping or whatever it may be, it's a surge of excitement in your brain, as you said, with dopamine, right? And so every time you get a like or some sort of response on social media, it urges you to come back in and get another one. It urges your brain to give you a certain level of joy and satisfaction that you keep getting more and more drawn into this, which keeps kids up half the night trying to get more and more of this interaction on these apps. And the fact of the matter is that we need to control the access in a very meaningful way and find other things for our kids to get involved in, which we can talk about when we come back.
We got to talk about it. Doc is always on it. Folks, we got to stay right there with us. We're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness. I want to hear from you, crew. What's your take on what Dr. Bridget is laying out? What's he putting down in terms of social media, parenting, and having this access? And this whole idea, should we start to have a conversation about banning certain platforms? Or is it just a simple thing of putting some time restrictions on whether your child, engages on a platform? What's your take about children, parenting, and social media? Stay with us. More conversation. Your thoughts up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hi, Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to Dr. Bridget, MD, our resident family physician here on The Culture, to talk to us about a host of things for this, for her Reclaim Your Wellness segment. And this week, she's talking about parenting, social media, and the politics of it all. And Dr. Bridget is putting out some jewels, folks, some diamonds for us to consider as we are having this very, very big, and I would say this is an ongoing conversation. I don't know how many households. I know it's a big thing in my household. I mean, the iPad, the use of access to getting on YouTube and TikTok and other social media. I think this is like, if this is not one of the top 3 things that parents have to deal with, which of course the top one is safety and security. But then once you know in the house, it's like, all right, so what you doing while you're in the house? You know what I mean? Like social media, your children have access to these type of platforms, to these apps. That is another major concern. I want to get some folks from some of the some thoughts from our crew as they share their take on this, Dr. Bridget. First and foremost, McCole checked in and said, I believe that it is the parents' caregivers' responsibility to monitor their children online and offline. Online and offline. So, McCole, you're saying it's the parents' responsibility, which I truly agree with. I think that as a parent, especially if you have younger children, but once you get into the teenage years, you have to build some level of trust with your child to be able to have those conversations with them. It's not going to be easy. Every child you can't have a cookie cutter conversation. You got to figure out what's the best way to build that level of trust, to build the relationship around social media. So, Dr. Bridget, when Nicole said, I believe it is the parents' caregivers' responsibility to monitor their children online and offline, what does that look like? Does that look like putting some boundaries on the time that they're on social media? Or does that look like, all right, you're on TikTok, you're going to see some wild stuff, having a conversation about the quality of the content? What does monitoring look like?
I think it's all of the above. I mean, keep in mind, there was a recent survey that came out. 46% of American teens say that they are online almost constantly. That's half of teenagers. Almost constantly. And 35%, 46% said constantly, and 35% said almost constantly. And so keep in mind that your kid is on there all the time. Where are you? Right? And that means that even when they're at home at night, even when you're all together, they're still on there all the time. That's half of teenagers. So monitoring goes beyond just taking the phone away. It goes really like, get in there. Have the conversations. What are you looking at? If you are all sitting on the couch on your phones and you know that's what's happening, what are you looking at? Let me tell you what I'm looking at. I will tell you one thing I do with my kids, that when I am on social media and I find something interesting, I share it with them. If I think it's interesting, if I think they could benefit from it, if I think, it's funny. There's one thing to make it a negative it's another thing to make it something that can bring you together. But
great point.
Conversation is really, really important. So let me throw out some ideas to you. And keep in mind, I want to make people realize that we're not just talking about being on the computer or social media. We're talking about children and anxiety. Okay. We're talking about what this does to them. We talked about the addiction and the dopamine, but we also need to be aware that the anxiety and the depression that it might cause. There's a new documentary that's out called Anxious Nation. Okay. And it says that 29% anxiety is increased by 29% in the recent years. And so kids, like almost a third of kids, are more anxious than we've ever seen before. And so if you're dealing with this, if you want to dig deeper, definitely look up anxiousnation.com. They have 2 contributors that will be significant. The Kenya Hamed, who is a neuropsychologist that is going to have input on there. And Tim Story is a pastor, author, and speaker, and he also talks about this as well. So definitely look that up. It's something that's just came out, and I think it's worthwhile for people that have kids. And sometimes you don't recognize anxiety right off the bat. You sometimes see combativeness or withdrawal, and many times it can be anxiety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me get back to what the crew is saying, and I'm glad that you brought up this point. Tiana checked in and said, this is why we need to log off and take a break from social media. We need to normalize taking a break.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there used to be something called screen time off. It was an organization that they would have a week where they would celebrate getting rid of not just your phone, but television, all screen time. And they would provide activities and things all around the country, things that you could go to really kind of get away from it, take a week off from the screen, and giving parents ideas of what to do with their children of all ages. It was a nonprofit that eventually, I believe, might have lost some of their funding, but it's something that you can still do at home in some ways as well. And so the first thing I would say is, as you started to mention here, set your own house rules. Why does the government have to decide what's going on in your house?
Right.
Set your own house rules. Don't let the phone be the babysitter. And then even create some sort of reward system for the amount of time that they're able to get away. Because keep in mind, if there's addiction, if they're that set, then, and you do have those dopamine surges, you're going to have to slowly pull them away from it and maybe provide a different type of reward as they get further and further away.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Cheese toast. I'm sorry. Not cheese toast. I see that you posted, but also Lori Parks, you said, I see little babies 2 and over every single day using a cell phone, holding them in their little hands. And when you take it away, they throw a fit. Cell phones, which has become the new babysitters.
Yes.
I see it in the grocery stores. I see it in the cars. I see it. I mean, I understand it, right? But what does that do for a baby, for a child of that age, 2, 3, 4 years old, when they get connected to the electronic device?
So it literally rewires their brain in a different way, that they need immediate satisfaction, immediate rewards. And so that temper tantrum that you see in the 3-year-old is the same temper tantrum that you're seeing in these high school students with the fight and the pepper spray, because they're developing an addiction to this quick information that is satisfying and stimulating to them, right? And so even though in the beginning, you know, it is an easy babysitter, but we've got to get engaged again. And guess what? It's also an easy babysitter for the adult as well. You know, kids used to suck their thumb. This is sucking your thumb, but it's a screen instead.
Absolutely. Karen, my sister Karen Connor checked in and said, it is frightening electronic devices have replaced human relationships. It is the parent's responsibility to set expectations and limitations and practice those expectations, set time limits. How do we get back to a place of teaching children the value of human relationships, the importance of those things? I mean, because I spent a lot of time with my children, Doc, and we go to places, we go to the beach, we go all types of places. But it's like when they come home, y'all gonna probably be mad at me when I say this, but if you spend a lot of time with your children, an hour on the thing, on the device, you just like take it. You know what I'm saying?
The key thing is that you already spent a lot of time with them. We're not saying that this is the end all be all and it's the worst evil and what have you. You know, you could watch TV together as well, and then you're getting complete transparency about what they're seeing, right? And that's the way, you know, we talked about that before. Now we've created something much more sinister because you can't see what they're seeing, and if you do see it, they can switch the screen like that. Right. So one recommendation besides being knowledgeable and setting privacy or what have you, wean them down to one platform. Why do they have to have Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat? And they're ones I'm sure I'm not even completely
YouTube is a huge one.
YouTube is huge, right? And a lot of people get their music from that as well. So why do they have to have so many options? I know my daughter has some that I had never even heard of that she is engaged in as well. And keep in mind, many kids will have more than one account. So just when you think you got smart enough to control the one account, many times they're just opening up another one. Okay.
See, when it gets to that point, Doc, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, first, I think you're talking about like your teenagers. You know what I'm saying? Because my 9-year-old, my 3-year-old, they're not setting up accounts. And I already had a conversation with my son and saying, son, you don't need to, because he looks at it, he's starting to become more aware of these things, but he's like, Dad, I don't think I need to be on social media. He likes learning stuff. So when he goes on YouTube, he finds the science and engineering stuff and how to build stuff and Lego masters and stuff. But there has to be some conversations, but when you start to create like ghost accounts and all of this stuff, it gets to be like way too far gone. And I think that there needs to be some level of intervention that has to happen between you and your teenager or your niece, your nephew, your grandson or granddaughter about what's really going on. Now, I got to take another pause, but here's the other part about this. And if you could speak to it, because we've been talking about children, but the adults, we see more and more adults, especially right in your field, that will jump on TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram to get medical and health information.
Yes. Let's talk about it. You want to talk about it now? I thought you said.
No, I'm just kind of like marinating on the fact that I'm just seeing so much of that happening. I'm like, yo, talk to your doctor. Like, don't go to some influencer to be like, yeah, this is how I learned about how to cure myself. Like, what the hell is going on? Folks, we're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Bridget and, of course, with you. Join us in the discussion. Post your comments on YouTube as we're streaming there now. And, of course, we're streaming on Black Star Network and Amazon News. And stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been checking in with Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment, as we talked about everything from social media, the impact it has on children, and the impact that it has on adults when it comes to parenting and understanding things in the world. And this is truly fascinating. There's so many different components of this conversation, Dr. Bridget. Before I talk about the impact that it has on adults, we have one crew member, Nolan J7439, said, Dr. Bridget, can you speak a little on how adolescent brain development coupled with unsupervised internet use contributes to certain social dysfunctions?
Right.
So we're talking about, like we talked about anxiety, but are there any other social dysfunctions? Do we start to see some level of schizophrenia, bipolar disease, other things like that may emerge because we find ourselves in this space?
So we're not saying that there's any direct relationship to social media and some of these like schizophrenia or bipolar or what have you. But what we are finding is that it can be the beginning of what may be more and more mental health issues. So as we said, that we start with something that like anxiety or depression, and then it can lead into much more complicated issues. So people become suicidal, they become avoidant, they do not develop as far as socialization skills to be able to interact with the rest of the world. And so people that maybe already have a predisposition for some of these conditions, many times it's a stressor that brings about the first bipolar episode or schizophrenic episode. And so in some ways, if this is that stressor, then you might see a correlation, but it is not the social media itself that causes it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So let me just say this, as we look at the impact of this on adults, Doc, that we just came out of COVID. Culture crew member Erica Beverett made this point that we came out of COVID, everything went online, whether it's our children's schooling, whether it's us doing work. Now we're in this digital space. Now that genie has been out of the bottle. And now folks are saying, hey, it's not good to spend a lot of time online. And you're like, but the whole world has told us to go online. Now we're supposed to just jump back out into the real world. How is that? How can you reconcile those two realities? And Erica also said, as we talk about folks going to social media to get some form of guidance about health and wellness, she said a lot of folks can't afford doctor visits, so we may lean on some social media understanding. we have been told that social media is the place to go. This is our new reality. And now it's like, nope, that's not the new reality. That was only a new reality for 2 years. But now it's time for you guys to get back out into the real world. How do we handle that?
The fact of the matter is that we've talked before about Black people in particular do better when they have physicians that look like them, that understand them, that can relate to them, and do individualized patient care, right? So when you decide to seek medical advice from, like you said, an influencer or someone that sometimes is being paid to recommend certain things, you cannot say that that is for you, number one. Okay. We've seen the downfall of like Dr. Oz, who is, I believe he was a neurosurgeon, if I'm not mistaken, or a neurologist. And then, of course, he's doing a social media platform. That is not the issue in itself, but he was often recommending things that had no medical sounding whatsoever. And people bought into it. Okay. We can't necessarily look at these platforms and assume that what they are saying is for you. The fact of the matter is that when you're going to the doctor, particularly if you're going to the pediatrician for your child, that pediatrician should be asking about the screen time. They should be asking about how many accounts, how much time, how is this affecting you? Have you had bad episodes, emotionally related to social media? And if the child or the parent says yes, then this should be treated like any other medical condition. Either some sort of recommendation should be put in place, a follow-up should be set, that this isn't something saying, oh, well, do better, get rid of the phone, I'll see you in 6 months or a year. This should be considered the new medical condition that the pediatrician should be addressing, because the downfall of this is only worse. So do not put your pediatrician or your doctor's feet to the fire and expect more when it comes to this.
And then for adults, you're saying that adults that are exposed to this level of all of this content, that it does play onto them. Does it become harder? I mean, you're a family physician. Does it become harder for you to do your job if your patients are coming to you? Well, I saw on Instagram, Dr. TikTok told me. Does that make your job harder when you're like, you got to debunk that process, deprogram your patient from that, and then reprogram them and understanding that there are other alternatives, a very real alternative to whatever problem they have?
I think at the end of, that's always been there. Before there was social media, there were the television shows or just the media in general, right? Something comes up and people ask me about it. Before that, I was getting, the latest newspaper, article that was sharing, some new fad. So that's always been there. And that's not necessarily a negative. If I find that to be threatening, that's my problem. That's not the patient's problem. At the end of the day, if I have a good relationship with that patient, I'm going to be able to take what they're bringing to me, consider what applies to them, and then also help them through this information, because they're really coming to me because something has been shared with them and they're trying to apply it to their life. So I don't consider that a threat. I consider it's all information coming to the table. The fact of the matter is, if I have adults or kids that seem to have issues with more social media and the information, I recommend leave the smartphone at home. Get a flip phone. Get a flip phone that you're using, whether it's the kid takes it to school. Okay, you can get a burner phone and it doesn't cost that much. You won't have some of these issues. It'll get you away from it, but you can still have contact with your kid. Adults are doing it now too. It's become very popular for adults are saying, I still have a smartphone when I need it, but day to day walking out the door, they take a flip phone that doesn't have all that information at their disposal constantly. If this is a real problem for you, that is a solution. Another thing is, just like at the bar or a big party and people put the car keys into the bowl, when people come home at the end of the day, those phones should go into the bowl or the kitchen or into the charging station or however you want to, address this. And most of the time I hear from parents, adults as well as kids that, oh, well, this is my alarm clock. Alarm clocks aren't that expensive. Get a regular alarm clock to wake you up. Get the phone out of the adult bedroom as well as absolutely out of your kid's bedroom. Plugging in the phone should be in another location so that they are not waking up in the middle of the night and you're not waking up in the middle of the night, dealing with social media and, being drawn into the space that actually it's a waste of time. It slows down your day. It makes you less productive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, oh man, Dr. Bridget, you always breaking it down. Look, is there going to be an after chat about this today?
Absolutely. I have some more suggestions about how to manage this for adults as well as for kids, as well as some other resources that I think people find interesting. So I will see you at 5:30.
And folks can definitely log on to Dr. Bridget's IG page. If you don't follow her, make sure you do. Follow her on Instagram and on Twitter and all social media. But she has those after chats, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right on her IG page. Phenomenal discussions about things that we talk about here and some additional information she can provide. And it's just a great way to get your questions answered by our very, very, very cool and laid back and just overall just knowledgeable Dr. Bridget, MD. Doc, thank you so much for joining us again this week. We look forward to reconnecting with you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farajii.
You're welcome. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come back, let me share with you some good news. Stay with me. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show and our final conversation. It's just something that I saw trending that I wanted to share with you, some good news, and it's about Miss Brittany Griner. Of course, Brittany, of course, serves as the center for the Phoenix Mercury WNBA team, and she is back playing basketball, folks. She is back playing basketball, and when she came out to play over the weekend, this was the warm welcome she got back at home. Take a look.
noise for sports fans. Basketball is home. Let's show some love and join us in welcoming BG.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube.
Wow. Big shout out to BG, Brittany Griner. Welcome back. When the Phoenix Mercury actually played the LA Sparks here on Friday night here in Los Angeles at the crypto.com arena. If you went downtown where Crypto is, they have this big, like, it's crazy. Crypto's huge arena, but right in downtown LA. But on the side of one of the buildings, they had this huge poster of Brittany Griner. Nike had put this out. All they had was a picture of Brittany Griner holding the basketball, kind of facing downward. And they just said one word, home. It was very, very touching. So Brittany Griner is back, even though the Phoenix Mercury's have lost their first 2 games of the season. As they kick off the season, she has been feeling the love both at home in Phoenix and abroad around the country. And we just welcome her back to the hardwood floors, and more importantly, welcome her back home here at the United States. And after undergoing that very, very crazy, just that crazy situation in Russia, it's just good to see that she's coming back to something that she loves, which is back to her fans and to basketball. So welcome home. Welcome back, Brittany Griner, and we have been pulling for you here on the Culture on the Black Star Network, and it's good to see you back on the hardwood floor. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I want to thank my dynamic team. I want to thank Joel. I want to thank my team member, my producer, Maddie. I want to thank my engineers for the day, Lise. Thank you. And, of course, our controls room for making today's show possible. Make sure you do your due diligence and show your support. Go to blackstarnetwork.com, where we're looking for your financial support to continue the great work that we're doing here on The Culture and on all the other shows here on the Black Star Network. And while you're there, make sure you download the app for free. Follow us on social media at Black Star Network on Twitter, Instagram, and, of course, share it with your family and friends. And just let folks know that Black media is here to stay. Also, while you're on social media, make sure you follow me, yours truly, Farajii Muhammad. You can find me at The Real Farajii on Instagram and at Farajii on Twitter. I would love to connect and build with you, and let's continue to have conversations about the culture. All right, folks, stay tuned. Up next is 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Make sure y'all check out Dr. Bridget for her after chat at 5:30 p.m. before you jump on to check out Brother Roland and the panel. But as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here, exclusively here, only here on the Black Star Network. Have a great afternoon and evening. Talk to you soon. Peace.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?